In this mini lesson, we're going to take a look at how we can use the goal seek subprogram in the data menu, what if analysis. This is going to help us to find out what a particular mean or mu is in order to solve a problem. We can also do the same with a standard deviation. Now, if we take a look at the norm dist function, which we've already been introduced to, we'll see that there's 4 arguments to it. If we're given a particular x and a mu and a sigma, and then we always put true down as the last argument, then what it will return is a probability, the area to the left of that particular x value, giving the mu and the sigma. In this particular problem, which we've worked through in class, the unknown is actually the mu. So let's take a look at this problem again, which we've worked through by hand. A bottling company wants to set its filling equipment so that on the average, that's the mu, only 5 bottles in 200, or 2.5%, will contain less than a minimum net fill of 400 milliliters. That's our x. Assume fills are normally distributed with a standard deviation, or sigma, of 5.1 milliliters. What is the mean to meet the requirements? So I've drawn a little picture down here. We've got x is normally distributed with some unknown mu and 5.1 as a standard deviation. So the picture can be drawn this way here with the unknown mu in the middle, and then the 400 is associated with 5 out of 200, or 2.5% of the bottles are less than a minimum of 400. So it's on the left side of the distribution. So we've got a probability statement that looks like this. So we already know what the p of x is. It's 0.025. We know what the sigma is. We know what the x is. What we don't know is the mu. So using the norm dist function, we've got a bit of a problem because we know the left-hand value, which is 0.025, but we don't know what this mu is. What we're going to do is a backwards procedure called the goal seek procedure under the what if analysis in the data ribbon that will help us find out what that particular mu is. I've made a little box here, just simply typed in these particular labels here, and so in this particular box I'm going to type 400. With the mu, I can just leave that as blank, or I can put in 0 or 1. Now if it's the sigma which is unknown, put in a 1, because if you put in a 0 then you'll end up with trying to divide by 0 and you'll get an error. But in this case our sigma is 5.1, and then for the probability, instead of putting in 0.025, I'm going to put in the norm dist function. So let me show you how that works. Equals norm dot dist, and then for the x I'm going to go and use cell referencing, so I'm going to click in I8, which is where the x appears, comma. Now it's asking for the mean, the mu. So that's where I've got this initial value of 1, and that's going to be changed when the program works through the problem, comma. Standard deviation is 5.1, so I click on that cell, I10, comma, and then I'm going to type true, close bracket. Now, initially, I'll get a probability of 1. And let me just copy that particular formula there. And I'm going to paste it here so that you can see what the thing actually looks like. There we go. So I'm using cell referencing. All right, let's go into the goal seeker now. If I go to the Data tab at the top, What if analysis, and then move down to the goal seeker, it'll bring up a little dialog box that looks like this. The set cell value has to be the cell that has the norm dist function in it. So in my particular case then, it will be I11. To-value is what does the probability end up being? What does the norm dist function end up being in the final result here? And it's 0.025. So that was given to us in the problem. By changing cell I9, which is where my mu is. So in other words, it's asking what does the mu have to be so that this formula, the norm dist function, will end up as an answer of 0.025. Now, I can't show you this on the computer here because you can't see my keystrokes, but I can actually copy this dialog box and then paste it into Word by using the following keystrokes. I'll hold down the Alt key next to the space bar, and while I'm holding it down, in the upper right you'll see that there's a print screen button. So just simply hold down the Alt key, tap the print screen button. It will look like nothing has happened, but you've actually made a copy of this little dialog box here, and you can move over to Word and just paste it with a Control V. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've done that. Now what we're going to do is press OK, and it goes through several iterations here until it lands on a number really close here to 0.025 or 2.5%, and that tells us that the answer, the mu, is 410. I'm going to press OK, and the last thing I need to do here is just simply copy these cells here, including the formula, and paste that in Word. And I'm done. I want to show you one other thing here, and that is that you could actually use the norm inverse function instead. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to go back here and change my sigma, keep my sigma as 5.1, my mu as 1, and again it doesn't really matter what you start with. And the p of x I'm going to put in here as 0.025. And then up here in x, this is where instead of putting in 400, I'm going to put in the norm inverse function. So equals norm dot inverse the mean, which is this particular cell here, I9, where the mu is. And sorry, you can't see that very well because of this little label here. Comma, and then move down to the sigma, which is right here. No, sorry, I made a mistake here. Let's back up. Okay, the first argument is the probability, so that's this guy right here, I11, comma. Now it asks for the mean, so I'm just going to go to this cell, and again you can't see it very well because it's behind this label, but it's I9, and then comma, standard deviation, which is the 5.1 in I10, close bracket. So you'll get a goofy number to begin with. I'm just going to copy this formula here and paste it like that. And again, what you'll see is that I'm using cell referencing. Now, let's go down here and choose Data, What If Analysis, Goal Seek. And in this case, the cell that has my formula in it is I8. That's where my norm inverse function is. The value is 400. Remember, the norm inverse gives you as an answer an x value. By changing the mean, So similar kind of procedure that we used with the norm dist function, but this is using the norm inverse function. When I press OK, it'll run through until I get the same answer, 410, and I can press OK. So there's two different ways that you can use the what-if analysis for this problem. One using the norm dist and one using the norm inverse. For the assignment, I would just do one, and I'd recommend the norm dist function. This ends the lesson.